Welcome back to the Week 7 edition of my weekly NFL Pick'em. I apologize to those that were not able to see my community tab posts. This video is a little bit late, and I'll explain everything at the end of the video, but I am fine. I appreciate all you guys' kind words and support. But this is the third year I've been doing this Pick'em series, and I have not missed a week yet. I was not going to let a potential COVID scare stop me from still making a video for this week, even if I had to do it after Thursday Night Football. And hopefully you guys didn't even need my help picking the Giants and Eagles game, and we can just get right into the Sunday games. And this week, I'm calling a lot of upsets. I had some success calling them last week. It was one of my best weeks of the season so far, and now I'm drunk with power, but I will save my bragging until after the picks when I recap the results of the Pick'em group. In the comments, Garrett Sanders asked if it was too late to join the group. Garrett, it is not too late to join, but if you had your heart set on that $100 NFL Shop gift card, then you've got an uphill battle here. But the link is in the description and in the pinned comment if you'd like to join. But yeah, that Thursday night game. It's kind of interesting having the presidential debate and Thursday Night Football going on at the same time. And I had both of those playing on different screens, and there was almost enough entertainment collectively from both to make it a pretty entertaining night. Thankfully, Daniel Jones chipped in what I think is probably one of the funniest plays that I've ever seen happen on a football field. You got to give Daniel Jones some credit though. That man is an athlete. He recorded the fastest run in the NFL since 2018, and that's including a MVP campaign from Lamar Jackson. And then each and every week, Carson Wentz is living up to that cockroach status that I gave him early on in the season, and he proved it once again. I mean, the guy plays terribly. His offensive line, he can't trust. I get that. His wide receivers, he can't really trust. I get that. But this guy looks like a backup quarterback at times. And then at the end of games, he's still able to make plays like the touchdown winning throw to Boston Scott. I mean, that was insane. That was a beautiful throw. He's a pretty frustrating quarterback. I don't think that his future is going to end with him staying with the Eagles his whole career, but he's the type of guy that I would expect to have a really, really good second half of his career if he's able to get to a new team and go in as the starting quarterback and not have a second round pick looking over his shoulder or Big Dick Nick Foles making him feel uncomfortable every week. But enough for that bum ass game. Let's get on to Sunday. Panthers versus Saints. The Panthers couldn't get it going consistently against the Bears defense last week, but Teddy Bridgewater is back in the building after being a backup here in New Orleans last year. Panthers offensive coordinator Joe Brady was also a member of the Saints coaching staff in 2017, so the Panthers have got the necessary intel to pull this upset off. But Michael Thomas is probably still hot about that suspension and wants to redeem himself. Also, everyone involved with the Saints organization probably still loves Teddy Bridgewater, the teammate, but I promise you that defense does not want the reason that they lose this game to be because Teddy Bridgewater beats them. The Saints, they're also coming off their bye week, and the Titans are showing that a well-rested team is putting in work in this COVID league, so I'm leaning towards the Saints marching 34-23. Bills versus Jets. That rainy Monday Night Football afternoon game was definitely a learning experience. It was really cool actually to have football on so early in the afternoon. Got kids and stuff still running around, yet I was able to completely ignore them while watching a football game from my living room instead of my office space for a change. But one thing I've noticed from the Bills is that Josh Allen is suffering from a slight fall from grace that he had earlier in the season. To be honest, it kind of makes sense because he was playing at an out of this world level, and I think that that's what you're going to get with him is some highs and some lows. There is a slight concern with the Chiefs exposing the Bills defense with running the ball on them more than Andy Reid ever commits to doing. The Jets are not part of these concerns with the Bills and should get waxed by them until the bottom falls out for this Jets team. And firing Adam Gase after a Dolphins game probably would have been too poetic for the New York City media to run with. So maybe this game can be the straw that breaks the camel's back. Adam Gase and Greg Williams have to make up the least likable coaching staff in NFL history. They've got me not only picking against them, but I find myself actively rooting for them to hit rock bottom, just so the rest of the players on this roster get a shot to thrive before the season's over and prove that they're part of the future for the Jets, whatever that looks like. Bills win 31-16. Browns versus Bengals. The battle for Ohio is back before we even knew we missed you. This is pretty simple. If Baker Mayfield is hurt, then he needs to sit. There's no sense in him trying to look tough by playing through an injury because a good leader also recognizes when they are a detriment to their team. And last week, Baker Mayfield was not ready to play in that Steelers game. I wouldn't have too much confidence in the Browns here anyways, but without Baker at 100% or at least at a much higher percentage than whatever he was working with last week, Bengals win 29-19. Next, we've got the Cowboys versus the Washington football team. And that game against the Cardinals on Monday night was terrible. It was embarrassing, and I struggled to watch the whole thing, to be honest. And for the Cowboys, the blame goes all around. The coaches, the players, Zeke, Andy Dalton in a primetime game. The offensive line is just in shambles. And I honestly think that might be the biggest issue with the team bouncing back from this horrible, horrible start. And you can hide the deficiencies with a full week of prep along the offensive line, but this is what happens when the final stable Jenga piece gets pulled at the beginning of a game. The whole thing collapses, game over. I don't want to judge the coach coaching staff too harshly because without Dak and with the current status of the offensive line, and I'm sorry McCarthy, there's no analytics that can fix this team right now. And then this week they were dealing with drama with an anonymous source. Let me tell you what, if that anonymous source turns out to be Jalen Smith, ooh, I will be hot. And I really enjoyed Jalen Smith as a story, and he seemed like a good teammate, but there's nothing I hate more as an NFL fan to watch these guys get that second contract and get paid, and then their play just completely fall off. But if your play starts to fall off, coupled with your mouth starting to pop off, ooh, I have a real issue with that. Well, let's hope that's not the case. Back to the coaching for this team. I was sad when it was time to let Jason Garrett go, but it was time. But now you see that the steady hand that he had with this team, which was more like a family to be honest, which is why the Cowboys never quit on him like they did on Monday Night Football with McCarthy. I don't really have a full opinion formed on McCarthy just yet because he got handed a terrible situation with COVID where a coach-player relationship was always destined to resemble one that you'd have with a substitute teacher that keeps getting your name wrong. But even worse, this was an online class. However, some coaches can and are thriving in the same scenario, like Kevin Stefanski, but I think the relationship with the former coach here made it harder for this team to buy in, and that buy-in was just escalated without Dak back there. There's still a lot of time for the Cowboys to respond, and it starts with getting the offensive line fixed and prepared, and I hope you just don't lose your best player minutes into the game, forcing you to scramble and adjust. That Washington defensive line, though, is no joke, and the number 2 overall pick wants his first shot at America's team, and the Cowboys offensive line is looking like the Pride Lands after Scar took over. Yep, that's right. I think this can still get worse. Mike McCarthy probably wouldn't deserve it, but I could see him being one and done if the wheels really fall off here. Washington wins 23-21. Packers versus Texans. So calling the Bucs to beat the Packers was one of my better calls of the season, I think, because there were so many people picking the Packers. Adding Devontae Adams doesn't automatically inject more production into an offense, and his return from injury slowed this offense down as a whole last year, so it's something to pay attention to moving forward. Honestly, I'm not sure why so many people are so captivated by the Packers once again. It must be that optical illusion that is Aaron Rodgers. I've gone on record here saying that I think that he's the most physically gifted quarterback to ever play the game and deserved to be in that GOAT discussion a few years ago when everybody just kind of assumed that he'd just get another Super Bowl title before he was all said and done. But instead of becoming Kobe or LeBron, he's going to end up being remembered more like a Carmelo or James Harden at the quarterback position. He doesn't train like TB12, and that's why I think he doesn't unleash his killer instinct on teams anymore. Now, Stephen A. Smith called him a bad man for a reason, but he's been stat padding for a couple seasons now, which is probably the reason the Packers front office drafted his future replacement this year. Now, this Texans defense obviously isn't as good as the Bucs, but the Texans have a real shot to get back in the win column after losing a hard-fought overtime game against the undefeated Titans. If the Packers get back to running the football, maybe they can take advantage of the holes that Derrick Henry exposed in this defense for over 200 yards last week. Or maybe they try and force Devontae Adams back into the game plan. I told you there were going to be upsets this week. Texans win 35-31. Lions versus Falcons. These NFC underdogs took care of their rut buster games last week in the Vikings and the Jaguars. Now they match up in Atlanta to find out who sucks a little less than the other. The Falcons, they are a different animal though with Julio Jones, and Raheem Morris sparked the Falcons to play some of the best defense that they've played in the last few years. I think they keep it going against the Lions. Falcons win 26-20. Steelers versus Titans. This is the game of the week, the clash of the Titans and Steelers. Get it? The Steelers' number 2 ranked offense matches up with the Steelers' number 2 ranked defense. For the record here, I'm always referring to yards per game as the league rankings. I just think it's the best stat for ranking units evenly through bye week season. This is only the 8th time in NFL history, with the first time that it happened dating all the way back to 1921, where 2 undefeated teams have met this late into the season. Yeah, late. It's only week 7. With the last time being 2015 when the 6-0 Packers and the 6-0 Broncos faced off. Aaron Rodgers fell short in that game too, by the way. Losing Devin Bush is going to hurt this Steelers defense, but their overall depth should help them maintain their elite level. Before the injury, I would have said that Derrick Henry will definitely not have the same cutback lanes in this defense as he did versus the Texans, but now that hole in the middle of the Steelers defense might be the way this Titans have to attack to keep this thing going. I think the Titans have had too many close calls against lesser competition, and this is the week that they slip up. This game is just so important for AFC playoff seeding though. The Chiefs are not firing on all cylinders, and they've opened the door for one of these 2 teams to get their bye week. Now, they'd have to still outpace the Chiefs for the rest of the season, but getting that bye week would be crucial for one of these 2 teams since they both had their bye week earlier than you would like because of the COVID complications. Those COVID complications have probably made this game a little bit personal for the Steelers, and I bet that Mike Tomlin has them feeling some kind of way about the Titans. I think they use that motivation to slow Derrick Henry. RIP my fantasy teams, but Steelers win 28-24. Seahawks versus Cardinals. The Seahawks are coming off their bye week, and the Cardinals are coming off of a short week on the road. Well, I guess the Cowboys were practically a walkthrough for the Cardinals, so I guess their short week's not really a disadvantage here in this case. But this is a chance for the Cardinals to make a statement in the NFC West. They need to fix the early game issues, get off to a quick start against the Seahawks, because they might have some bye week rust to shake off in the first quarter. The Seahawks are also talking about bringing in Antonio Brown after his suspension is up. If they weren't already faves to rep the NFC in the Super Bowl, then AB should definitely put them on top. I don't know if they would still bring Josh Gordon back if he got reinstated if they had AB also, but imagine DK, AB, Tyler Lockett, and Josh Gordon as your top 4 wide receivers. David Moore is a really underrated wide receiver, and to have him as your 5th guy would be insane depth. This Antonio Brown story might be a slight distraction for the Seahawks. That paired with the bye week, the road trip, I could see all of that contributing to the Cardinals keeping it close, but in my opinion, they're just not on the Seahawks level yet. Seahawks win 31-24. Chiefs versus Broncos. The fact that Le'Veon Bell was added to this Chiefs offense is really just unfair. Bell offers so much versatility as an offensive weapon and could be a starting wide receiver in the NFL in my opinion. The fact that he chose the Chiefs over Miami means that he wants to go out and win a championship. That means he has bought into the team goal, he's gotten his money, and now he wants a ring. This is like every old star in the NBA signing with the Lakers this past year. It paid off for them. We'll see if Bell can help contribute to the Chiefs repeating this year. From a fantasy standpoint, don't think that Le'Veon Bell will eat into the carries too much for Clyde Edwards-Helaire, but I do think that he will allow some pressure to be taken off as a receiving option, but it's going to be a game-by-game basis, and they're going to be going with the hot hand. So from a predictability standpoint, Edwards-Helaire does kind of take a shot there. But there's going to be a lot of season left, and keeping your running backs fresh for another playoff run is going to be key for this team. As for the Broncos, it's easy to undermine their win in New England last week because of the Cam Newton COVID situation preventing him from being able to fully prepare, but let's give Drew Lock some credit for going into Foxborough to play a Belichick defense and leading the drives necessary to win the game in only his 8th start in the league. Sure, he didn't put up a good stat line. Those picks at the end of the game were unacceptable. You can't do that in that scenario. But it's hard to argue with 6 straight scoring drives, even if they all were field goals. Problem is, this week they're going to need touchdowns, and I just don't think that they can keep pace. Chiefs win 29-20. Jaguars versus Chargers. Chargers win 21-10. 49ers versus Patriots. I don't look at that game against the Rams as a turnaround game for the 49ers. I look at it more like a team that was just trying to keep their head above water, and this is going to be a tough road trip for them to Foxborough. Most notably for Jimmy Garoppolo, who's making his homecoming trip back to New England, and the offense is going to go as far as he can take them. But who do you think is going to be more prepared for Jimmy Garoppolo's return, Belichick or Jimmy? Patriots should have their 2 best players back for a full week of practice this week, and much like the Chiefs, they're just too well coached of a team, and they respond well from losses. I wouldn't want to have to play the Patriots after that loss. And then on Sunday Night Football, we have got Buccaneers versus Raiders. There's a lot of strange storylines or connections between these two teams, even though they're in different conferences on opposite ends of the country. But take John Gruden, for example, longtime coach for the Raiders, traded to the Bucs, then they meet them in Super Bowl 37. You got Tom Brady in the Raiders with the Tuck rule. But speaking of that Super Bowl Bucs team, it took a while, but their defense is finally back to being a respectable unit. Obviously, they're not even close to that early 2000s edition. That was a historic unit with countless Hall of Fame players on it, but this is still a really good Bucs defense in a year where defense appears to be optional for the majority of the league. The thing holding this Bucs team back is the way they're a little bit undisciplined, and Tom Brady is a perfectionist, much like myself, so it's going to be interesting to see if he can elevate everyone around him. I know he's already done that to the rest of the teams in Tampa Bay already, and Bruce Arians doesn't typically have highly penalized teams. In fact, I went and looked back. Whenever he took over for a team, they instantly improved in that category. So this could be something that the Bucs tighten up down the stretch and really put it all together to challenge the Seahawks in the NFC. But for the Raiders, I didn't even get a chance to hype them up after their win in Kansas City last week because they were going into the bye. But after simmering on them during that bye week, I decided I'm not really going to overly hype them up, to be honest. It was a good win for morale, and they ended a streak of road losses in Kansas City, so it's nice that you won't have that hanging over your head anymore, especially if you meet up again in the playoffs this year. But the Raiders don't win that game if there is a packed crowd at Arrowhead. They just don't. Honestly, I'm not sure how to factor in this unique aspect of the season into future picks, but it's 100% a contributing factor to the Raiders being able to overcome the Chiefs in Arrowhead. And the lack of fans in the stands isn't going away anytime soon, and it really does help Derek Carr and the Raiders offense more than most teams. Derek Carr struggles with the outside noise, both on the field and off. This season is set up for him to thrive with the ability to communicate pre-snap without the noise of a road crowd, which is something that he struggled with up until this point in his career. Both of these teams, though, I think have bright futures ahead of them this season, and this is a tough game to predict, but I think the Bucs are more talented and will be sharper after coming off that 38-0 run they put on the Packers. Oh yeah, and Trent Brown, the Raiders offensive tackle, is now on the COVID list. Bucs win 31-20. And then on Monday Night Football, we've got the Bears versus the Rams. Bears fans are quickly turning into the 2020 version of the 2019 49ers fans because they are 5-1, and I've picked against them every single week, and yet they still keep winning games. I don't know how they're doing it other than that defense keeping them in the game, and then their erratic quarterback play making enough plays when it counts to come home with the W. The Rams last week against the 49ers, I don't really know what happened with them. It seemed like the offensive game plan was very bland, vanilla. I don't know if maybe they scaled things back in case they had to play a much more important version of that matchup later on in the season, but they just got beat up in the trenches. I feel like I was a lot higher on the Rams than most people going into the season, and with them being the home team coming off a loss, prime time, in their new stadium, you know I want to pick the Rams, right? But then I'm also at this thing where even if I did want to pick the Bears, do I want to pick them just because I want to appease Bears fans, or is it because I actually think that the Bears are going to win? See, now you Bears fans are in my head, and I don't like that, so I'm going with the Rams again, 28-23. All right, real quick, let's do the pick'em recap for week 6, and then I will tell you guys what happened to me and just give you an update overall. So in week 6, we had a 5-way tie for the top spot, and I checked all the picks for these folks. Thanks for that suggestion, Chris, in the comments. And every one of them missed the Broncos over the Patriots, with the Falcons or the Bears being the other miss for them. But you see your boy up there in second place. Well, you know, technically it's 6th, but the second most points for the week. Like I said earlier, I think I had my best week overall as far as finding a couple upsets with the Falcons, and I guess the Bucks are technically one. But I also missed on the Broncos, and then I picked against the Bears and 49ers too. But man, I still missed that 14-pointer in week 2. F's in the chat for that. With the worst week being dropped, I would have been able to drop the 6 points from week 1, and then I would have a +8 on my overall score. Wham, 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 I know. But overall, you can see our undisputed pick'em group leader, David 2, was able to drop his 8 points from week 6 and maintain a 2-point lead on everybody. We've got Quebec Steelers coming in at number 2, and then we have a 4-way tie for 3rd right now. My 8+ handicap would put me tied for 33rd. Obviously, that's unofficial AF, but I just wanted to figure out where I'd be for my own little moral victory. But great job for all the leaders. Keep it up. Don't forget to make your picks. Luckily, I had made mine before the Thursday night game this week, and I did pick the Eagles to win. And sometimes I remember to enter my picks into this cool site called Tally Site. It's supposed to be a website for experts. I don't know why they let me on there, but it tracks everybody's picks or predictions and stuff like that and gives them a real sort of ranking score. I think mine's terrible because I never remember to put the picks in when I make good picks and seem to always get shredded. But I did pick the Eagles, and I got the spread right on that, and I went with the under, so I was 3-0 on Thursday Night Football, baby. Let's go. But yeah, appreciate you guys watching this whole thing. Because you guys are some ride or dies, I am going to share with you what took place on Wednesday and why I had to delay this video a little bit. Alright, so after the Cowboys game on Monday Night Football, I was kind of hot, but I figured I would just stay up until I got tired and work on the mock draft that I've been wanting to post for a couple weeks, get a head start on the pick'em, and I have some other things on my to-do list that I wanted to focus on and just use that quiet time where nobody was up in the house, get started. And then I'd go to bed for, a few hours, and then for those of you that don't know, we've got these twins that are about 1.5 years old, and me by myself, I watch them every single day. So I figured I'd wake up when they got up, be super tired and groggy all day, but it was okay because I would have had a productive evening. And let's be honest, watching twin babies during the day is pretty mindless activity. At around 6 a.m., my wife and oldest daughter got up, and I was kind of wired at that point anyway, so I ended up just working all the way through the morning. Babies got up, and I figured, you know what, I'm just gonna stay up and go to bed really early, not even bother to eat dinner with the rest of the fam, just go to bed. So I pull all-nighter. I'm gonna go to bed at 6 o'clock in the evening, and anytime that I've done that before, my body has always woken me up at 1 a.m. or 2 a.m., and I've always been mad because I was trying to sleep the entire night from that point forward, right? Well, of course, this time my body decided to wake me up at 10:30. So I got about 5 hours of sleep, 4 or 5 hours of sleep maybe that night. But I woke up feeling fresh, rejuvenated, and figured, hey, this gives me plenty of time to focus on the pick'em all day, get everything done, and I'll just go to bed that night at a normal time. Well, I started to notice something weird with my breathing the day before, but it didn't seem like that big a deal. It just felt like when I was taking a breath, I could only get about 80% of my lung capacity filled up, and I have to really pull extra hard to get that full breath in. Well, I made the mistake of mentioning that to my wife. At the same time, she was picking up our daughter from daycare, and she had a runny nose. She freaked out, assumed it was either COVID or something worse. I told her, no, I'm just really run down and tired. Well, she insisted that I go to the doctor. She called our local doctor, told them about what I was feeling, and they said, no, you need to go straight to the emergency room. So here we go. And I tried to tell her the same thing I told you guys at the beginning of this story about the sleep and that I'm just run down, that from Monday morning morning until Wednesday night. I literally had 4 or 5 hours total of sleep, and she kept on yelling at me, being tired doesn't cause shortness of breath. And I was like, this isn't just tired, this is a special elite level of tired that you only get from working hard on super cool weekly NFL pick'em videos, you know what I mean? But you guys know, if you got a serious woman in your life, you got to do the things that make her happy. So put on my mask and we headed to the ER. I went through all of these tests, sat there for hours that night, mad as hell that I said anything, but also at a state of fatigue that I could barely even see straight. All of the tests came back with great results, blood tests, EKGs. They couldn't find anything wrong with me. I actually just got the COVID test back while I was recording this with all the updates and stuff. That came back negative. So basically what I thought is what it was. I was just extremely tired. I went to bed that night at about 9:30, slept till about 9:30 that morning. My wife stayed home to help me with all 3 of the kids. I took another nap in the middle of the day because I was just feeling like death. It's still not back to 100%. There's still like a little bit of pressure on there. I'm hoping that I can go to bed tonight and wake up tomorrow and feel back to myself again. But I am okay. Like I said, thank you guys so much. Sorry for the long, drawn out story here. That's why I saved it to the end. I appreciate you guys so much for listening. Staying tuned, staying patient, and I'm going to try and figure out what I can do here to make this a little bit more of a streamlined process. It's just really hard for me as a person that struggles with ADD that I can't do this in little chunks. I need to be able to sit down, lock in, and just have a vision for what I want to see or what I want it to look like or be about, and just knock it out then. And I can't really do that while these twin babies are running around my feet, you know what I mean? Like, and they're up for a majority of the day, right? So like, when else am I going to do it? So I think what might eventually happen to these weekly pick'ems is they might become a live stream. I might toy with those going down the line here with the rest of the season. I considered doing this one as a live stream since it was late, but I just didn't feel like I was really prepared to do that to the quality and the level in which I feel like I produced the weekly videos at now. So I didn't want to settle for poor production value. I think it was you, Armball, that called me out for that Google Slides show I did before. But yeah, lesson learned. Your body cannot run off of Adderall and coffee. You do in fact need sleep. So go out there, get your sleep, folks. Make sure you're well rested. My wife always tries to tell me you can't pour from an empty cup. Should probably start listening to her more. But I appreciate you guys listening to me ramble on about all this stuff, and I will see you all in the next video.